better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice.
Howdy, Rob.
Howdy, Matt.
It's Dungeon Master of None.
I'm Dungeon Master Rob.
And I'm Dungeon Master Matt. And Rob, today's episode, we asked the astounding question: what if not just characters had classes, archetypes, professions, etc., but what if people did too? What if role players had classes?
I think that this is a terrific question to ask. And if you've ever asked yourself, or if you ever thought about your players, what if I applied the Myers-Briggs test to a player character?
Then your brain is broken.
If you ever were like, boy, I love Enneagrams, but what if Enneagrams applied to the way that we play games? What if we could somehow apply structured, mechanistic, categorizations to people the same way, in the ways that they play games, in the same way that we do in every other aspect of life.
What if my need to systematize everything about the game I play also started to apply to people?
That's exactly right. What if you were just able to gather enough information and fully understand the grand scope of everything that motivates a person, you would finally begin to have fun. If you ever thought that then this is the episode for you.
Now this is obviously not possible / really stupid, but it's, I think, actually worthwhile to think about what are the motivations of the people at your table in like every sense. Like, why do they show up on like Thursday nights? Why do they pick the types of characters that they pick? What brings them joy in the actual game at your table? And by thinking about that, maybe your game could get a little bit better.
We poke fun at them, or I do, and they deserve it. But things like astrology, Enneagrams, Myers-Briggs tests, these are not scientific measures. And if you're using them to dictate your actions or make decisions about other people, that's an issue. But if it helps you to sort of think through things about yourself or better understand the people around you, they're not necessarily harmful. It isn't bad if you identify with the type of person that the astrological chart suggests that you are. It doesn't to be insulting if your wife or girlfriend says, "Oh, that's such a Virgo thing for you to do," no matter how much it hurts your feelings when she says things like that. But in the same way, it can be useful to sort of systematize the way that people approach the game, and as long as you aren't too prescriptive about it, I think that it really is, trying to understand the personality types and the motivations and, grouping together into broad categories, I think can have some utility. You just need to be really careful about not like slapping people into boxes and hoping they stay there. It's not something that you can, not a rule. It's a guideline. At best.
Just thinking about how different your life would be if all the hot girls in the like 20 teens, instead of getting into astrology, decide to get into GNS like archetypes.
Right. Right. Imagine how much what a world we would live in, right? Yeah, actually, that's a good point. A long time ago, and I'm gonna have to find the episode number, I talked about gamist, narrativist,
simulationist
as a way of thinking about games. And that is similar, but now we're going to talk about how to think about players. And in both cases, everything is a mix, and it's not good to try to like force a definition onto anything, but it can be useful in trying to think about how to run better games. So what are we talking about when we talk about types of players, Matt?
Right. And you'll find a bunch of these lists online, things like, the tactician, the method actor, the explorer, right? And we'll get into some of them. It's just a way of saying like, answering, at least in my mind, two questions. Like what is it that people like want out of games? What do they get enjoyment from? Like, why are they here?
Right, exactly. The first of this came from a guy with a really funny name, Bartle's Taxonomy, and I have always thought that this is sort of the maximally useful version of this, which is basically like a 4-quadrant way of categorizing what people like to do and how they enjoy. And Bartle was writing this about MUDs, I am so sorry, I forgot what MUD stands for. Multi-user dungeon. There we go. Jesus Christ. And MMORPGs. And he lumps all 4 players into socializers, explorers, achievers, or killers. And this is sometimes called warriors instead of killers, or role players instead of socializers, or something like that. But I've always liked this as a very, very broad guideline. But this is, he came up with this in 96. And so we've had a lot of time to come up with a lot of different player types, but a lot of games still use this 4-quadrant approach, including Cyberpunk Red, which I run, and player advancement in Cyberpunk Red is based off of these taxonomies. And my players like it, and I like it. Nobody fits neatly into one category, but this is sort of this is what I think of as the starting point for trying to lump players into groups. And as you might imagine, coming from an MMORPG player and designer in the 90s, it's a little bit, it's prescriptive nerd shit. But I think that there was a genuinely good approach here.
And I think you can basically look at any of the players of your table, and sort of say, what percentage of each of these, do they get enjoyment from? Or what do I see them doing? Are they always trying to build an alliance with another faction? Are they more interested in role-playing with the people at the table, having conversations with them? Do they want to kick in the door and auto fire their machine gun built into their thigh? What are they doing?
Right. And Matt and I have talked about player types a lot. People ask us these questions not so specifically about taxonomies, but about how to deal with certain types of players. And we've discussed the what I consider to be one of the major divides, which is the difference between, or the divide between, power gamers and role players, which, as we have also discussed, isn't a real conflict, but I think to me that feels like the primary spectrum, and where most of the conflicts arise is people not having the same expectations around those 2 types of play, which are not necessarily in conflict, but sometimes are.
Well, you say that role players versus, optimizers or power gamers is one of the axes to think about it. I think maybe even a more fundamental one for just sitting down at the table is active versus spectator. And we're pulling this from Daddy Matt Colville on this. And I think this is useful. Are they actively engaging in what's happening, or right now is this person content to watch?
Yes, I actually think this. I loved this from. Excuse me. I loved this from Matt Colville. I think it's I think that if you must divide your players into groups, and I don't think you should in any real way except to help you think about how to make a better game. But if you do, I think that this is the sort of fundamental one, right? Are they engaged with the game? Are they passive, or are they active? And there are degrees of this. Some people are one way sometimes and one way another time, or have fits and starts of activity. But that, I think, is correct when you're thinking about what is most likely to be the obvious divide of the table, and what is a potential source of conflict. And I think a lot of this is about the reason why you do this, right, is to, 1, try to avoid table conflict, and 2, to make sure everyone's having a good time. And you don't need to do this if that's not a problem at your table, but it is helpful, especially when starting out, to try to figure out what everyone is there to do and what they enjoy and how they are going to relate to the other players at the table.
Okay, I think we finally hit at the purpose of this whole discussion, which is how can we increase the amount of enjoyment, satisfaction from the people sitting around the table, and philosophical terms like pleasure, philosophical pleasure, not
Right.
the normal way
Right.
it's used,
Yes.
but how do we maximize pleasure and reduce pain of the people at our table? And I think I love all these different types, thinking about these, the butt kicker versus, the storyteller. But I think one that we don't think about, that I think is maybe the first one, which is answering the question, like, why do players show up for your game? And that like brings in a bunch of different answers. Like, for me, there are people who show up to the game because they like to play Cyberpunk Red, or they like to play Pathfinder 2E. And there are also people who show up to the game because their friends are there and they need to hang out with some friends. They need friend time. And obviously, like all these categories, they overlap, but that's like a big one for me.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one area where a lot of these taxonomies, not Bartle's, but a lot of them tend to overlook that some people are just there to hang out, and that's a good thing. Or maybe that's not why they're there. Maybe they love to play a role-playing game, but like a big part of the appeal is like, this is the day of the week that I get to hang out with my friends. And what we're doing is we're playing D&D, or we're playing Cyberpunk Red or whatever. And I think that's often overlooked in these taxonomies. I think some of the more sophisticated ones definitely take into account things beyond the game, because a lot of people don't. This is, I think sometimes uncomfortable to say, but people are not always there to engage with the game or the game system. Like not even like first or second on their list of like what they enjoy about playing the game. So of course they know their stats and they'll play the game and they're having a good time, but it isn't, obsessing about like whether or not they want treasure or to defeat a powerful opponent or explore a ruin. Misses the point, because those may not be anywhere near the top of what they're there for. That being said, one of the nice things about those players is that they're easy to please, because they're just there to hang out with their friends and have a good time. And as long as everybody's getting along, that's the easiest thing for you as a GM to manage.
It's easy, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be overlooked, right? And so
Precisely.
how do you like provide enjoyment for the people who are like, I'm not here to play, Vassin from the Free League system because I'm excited about the setting. I'm here because this is the social activity of the night. And I think it means, as the dungeon master, you need to make sure that like there is a lot of time where everyone gets to talk to each other, like, again, mediated by the game, where it's not just you adjudicating and calling for rolls and checks and spell. Like, there's plenty of that time during the game where it's role playing or table talk or all those things where people are interacting not just with you but with each other. And that's what I find that the people who are there for the socialization aspect want.
And this gets back to something that we've talked about a lot, which is making sure that everybody gets some spotlight time. And this is where these types of breakdowns or categorizations can help, can help, because you want to make sure that everybody gets spotlight time or time to talk or time to do something that's interesting to them. But if you are giving the spotlight during a heavy combat moment to a player that doesn't enjoy combat, then that's not well used spotlight time, and they may not feel like they are getting their chance to do what they want or to talk, and they may be uncomfortable or overwhelmed by that moment. Same thing if you give like a heavy role playing spotlight to your, killer optimizer. So there's only, it is not entirely incumbent on you as the DM or the GM to manage these things. Ideally, sorry, I'm saying it sort of is. This is one of the things that's hard about being a GM and why it is, not something that you can fully systematize. Is you have to really like know your players and pay attention and be able to adapt to their needs and desires and make sure that they're having fun. But starting out by knowing what it is that they like to do or what they enjoy about the game makes that easier and allows you to make sure that everybody gets time to speak, gets time to have fun, gets to feel like they're part of the group.
Yeah. The fun or dangerous thing about this divide between people who are there for the friendship versus people who are there for the game is that slowly, ideally, right, it grows for each person, right? That people are there just to play a specific game they heard about. Hopefully, right, develop some amount of fellowship or friendship with other people. And the more role-playing games you play, the more opinions you get about them. So,
Yes.
like I have played a million role-playing games, and for me, my primary motivator is still the fellowship thing, right? For all the systems and stuff. Like the thing I care most about is like hanging out with people in person.
I mean, these are always so fun, so interesting for me because on the sort of like the mechanical level, fighting, exploring, builder, achiever. I love all this stuff, and this is why I play so many RPGs, because RPGs like hit all of my like pleasure centers. Like I love to have a good combat. I love to find out something new. I love to achieve something in game, and so it makes it hard for me to put a box around myself. But it also, like, I wouldn't bother with any of those things if it weren't a social game. Like it's like Matt, I think the driving force is having people to play with, like doing socialization and having an excuse to get together and do something as a group. And this so for you as a GM, you need to be thinking about what your games are accomplishing, or what your players are accomplishing in the game, and whether or not that meets any of these various needs, and if they are having a good time. And like I said before, this could be easy, right? If everybody's there, they're chatting, it's all hunky-dory. I mean, lately a bunch of my games have been an hour too late starting because we're all catching up and we haven't seen each other in a month, which is an unfortunate part of being an adult. But that's
a great example for the people there for fellowship and friendship. Sometimes you don't want to cut that part short,
exactly.
Right? There's all this advice online that's like, don't let that go over 10 minutes.
I hate that advice.
Do.
Like,
that's terrible advice.
If people are having fun talking, who cares? Like, no one's going to be like, if they're having fun, they're not going to be mad that they weren't having a different type of fun. And like, I don't know. I have played with players who would be frustrated if like progress weren't made in the game. That's less and less often the people who are in my groups, but that's valid. And this sort of brings me back to, one of the axes along which you judge your players, which is, the socialization to, achievement progress axis, which again aren't necessarily in conflict, but they are, I think, sometimes, because you only have so much time, right? So if you're trying to work your way through a dungeon and there are players who really want to find out what's the end of that dungeon, but you spend half of your session talking, and that is in tension, that is in conflict. And a lot of this can be resolved ahead of time by making sure that your players are all on the same page about what they want to do. But you, as the GM, you have tools to mitigate this if you have players who are motivated by different things, by thinking about these taxonomies and asking them ahead of time, like, what do you want to get out of the game?
Yeah. I think that's you've brought this up already, but like the next big question, right? Okay, we've got the friendship versus the game itself divide, right? The tabletop versus the role playing game. Within the role playing game, right? People have varying degrees of things that bring them enjoyment, fulfillment, and pleasure. And you got to ask yourself, what is bringing pleasure to different people at my table? And that's where, as Rob said, we get the majority of the thinking that has been done on this. Is there a specific example or list that you want to look at? So you talked about Cyberpunk's Socializer, Warrior, Explorer, Role Player.
Let me talk about Cyberpunk Red, because I really like this. I think this is the best version of this.
Let's
Mike Pondsmith
drill down
has
on
been
this one.
Writing and running games for decades now, and he knows what he's doing. So This is what Cyberpunk Red divides their players into. So there are warriors, combat-oriented players that like to engage in tests of skills against adversaries, socializers, social-oriented players that are all about the overall game experience. These are the people that Matt and I have been talking about for the last 10 minutes.
Right.
They like to tell jokes, record stories, contribute in ways they're not directly within the game. In and out of the game, they tend to take supportive roles, right? There are explorers, exploration-oriented players who like to find new things in the world. And then there's role players, which are straightforward. Role-play-oriented players like to elaborate on playing their character as accurately. Like to concentrate on playing their character as accurately to type as possible. I find that there's a lot of overlap between socializers and role players, and a lot of overlap between warriors and explorers. But one of the things I like about this list is that they give you sort of like 4 quadrants, and with a bunch of statements in it. Cyberpunk Red does, and it says pick 5, and the box with the most that sort of like applied to you is your first quadrant, and the second one is your second. So let me give you an example. For me,
Sure.
Under the warrior box, there's prove your skill in battle. I love that. Have a nemesis to beat. I love that. Under explorer, there's solve a difficult puzzle. I love that. Learn about the world and its lore. I love that. Contribute to the history of the world. I love that. So I would pick those 5 things probably. There's lots of other stuff that I like, but I'm trying to just pick the things that excite me most. So I would probably be explorer, warrior. Under socializer, there's things that are as broad as be part of the group, reminisce about a favorite game moment. Under role players, there's something like act out the accents and mannerisms of your character, know about pets, favorite things, friends, and enemies. This is a really straightforward, what do you like? What are you excited about when you sit down to create a character and play that character? And everybody can answer these questions, I think. And this makes it really easy to figure out what you as a player and for you as the GM want to accomplish in every game session.
So what I've done with this list as a game master is flipped it. And this is one of the more simple lists of typology of players, but it's great for flipping it because, again, like Rob said, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of things that are not covered, but there's so many specific examples that if preparing, maybe not your session for the night, but preparing your arc of what's probably or likely to happen in the next 2 to 3 sessions, if you can make sure you check 1 to 2 of each of these things in each of the boxes, right? Assuming you have a really diverse set of players, right? They're all going to find things that really bring them extra enjoyment, right? If your adventuring party enjoys the thrill of the hunt, establishes a stronghold, and that'll get the warriors, and they find a new place on the map, or they establish an alliance, that'll get the explorers. If they get a pet or know more things about a pet, or develop more of their character's background, that will get the role players. If they have time to contribute all together in a success and talk about what's going on, that'll get the socializers, right? So if you're okay, am I hitting these boxes all around these 4 boxes continuously? Okay, everyone's going to be more or less happy.
You may have noticed this is just a different approach to something that we've talked about before, or a different way of coming at the question of how to structure a game session. It's a pretty good rule of thumb. This is more for D&D, but really for any role-playing game, to have a little bit of exploration or puzzle, something where you're, figuring something out, a little bit of role play, and a little bit of combat. Each session should have, one of the 3 pillars. Sorry, each of the 3 pillars.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, then generally everyone will be happy. But approaching it from the sort of player motivation first will generally, I think, get you to the same goal. But and this happens to me a lot, if I know all of my players like to socialize and role play a lot, then I won't have any sessions that don't have conversations or socialization or role playing. I might have sessions that don't have combat. That happens to me.
Right.
Not frequently, but also not never. But if I knew that all my players were there to test their might, to, use their abilities in a cool and interesting way to try to have the neatest, like most powerful build, then I would not have any sessions without combat. But that's one of the things that this sort of typology, this sort of categorization helps you think about. And you may not need to be as prescriptive. You may not be like writing this shit down. You may not need to give your players a survey, but it can help. And it definitely helps, I think. And Matt and I think these days are mostly playing in home games, but like this can be really, really useful if you are doing like a con game or starting a game with strangers or playing at like a local gaming store. You don't know these people. This won't like resolve any problems necessarily like right away, but if your players hand you like you give them like a short survey or ask them to like circle some things in this little 4-quadrant box, then you can you could at least sort of like adjust your expectations and your plan so that you are making sure that they're having a good time.
This can also be like a checklist of what's going wrong or what not to do, right? If you find your players are, you're getting that vibe of like frustration, maybe it's because, most of them are socializers, explorers, and role players, and you've just had 2 sessions where every enemy had to be defeated or bested in some sort of mechanical combat and could not be negotiated or interacted with in any meaningful way, right?
Yes, right. This is a great example, Matt, because especially players who are not weaned on the heavy combat, this is a skeleton, you have to fight it world of D&D will become frustrated, and in my experience this happens a lot, if they're constantly going up against enemies that don't want to talk, that can't be managed in any way, and it always ends in combat because they want to talk to these goblins or whatever, and that may or may not fit with your game, but like they if they are on the wrong part of the graph, like in terms of what they enjoy, then a lot of standard gameplay may not fit for them. By the same token, if you bring a bunch of power gamers to a Powered by the Apocalypse session, with, there's like a political intrigue thing, they may become quite bored, because they haven't had anything to shoot or fight in, 30 minutes to an hour. And by the way, I'm happy to like embarrass myself here. This is often me. If I'm not interested in the story, and if I haven't come prepared for like what we're doing, I may get annoyed and bored because I'm like, I want to fight something. Like I want to combat. It kind of depends on like the story and the setting and the GM that I'm playing with, but these are good things to know about.
Right. If you find players who are like instigating things, right, or it could be, I find it's or breaking up what is happening. I find it's usually because of 2 reasons. It's one, they're very story driven and they're frustrated the story isn't moving forward because they feel that this is disconnected from the thing they want to accomplish. They're an achiever, they're an explorer, or they are like a warrior, a butt kicker, and they're frustrated that they have this character sheet in front of them that is mostly spells that blow things up, and they haven't had a chance to use them.
And this happened a lot more in games that I used to play when I my groups were more varied and had people who weren't quite as good. I don't know, word is mature, I guess I would probably say, to be honest, about like what they wanted to do and what they wanted to accomplish in the game. And as a player, I often find myself doing I do a lot of like door breaking down and, causing problems just to get things moving because I am an achiever.
Rob is
explorer.
a boots first.
I'm a boots first player, and I try not to be annoying about it, but I do get frustrated and, quite frankly, bored if we are constantly like going over the same thing and making plans that never go anywhere and hesitating. And some players love that. Like, that's the thing, is like some players will love to just talk over a plan or noodle on something, or this sounds pejorative, dither but like dithering can be quite pleasant. Like it
socializers love dithering. Role players love dithering.
And the funny thing is about this is like, as a GM, I don't mind dithering at all. Like it's actually like, I'm happy to like let them talk when they like want to interact with the NPC or ask a question about the world. I'm happy to give them information. But if they're happy to chat and think and figure out, you know, on their own time what the next plan is, that's, again, because I know going in with, you know, some of my groups that is going to happen. There's going to be a lot of dithering, and so I've planned for that, and I've made a lot of notes so that, or planned a lot of things so that if their dithering goes in unexpected directions, which it often does, that I'm ready for that. But that's a benefit of like knowing my players and knowing like what they like to do in the game. And, you know, I keep coming back to this. You don't have to put like a label on this. You don't need to, you know, go to Bartle's taxonomy or one of these lists to try to plan, but it can help. Maybe we should talk about some of the more granular breakdowns, Matt, because I'm gonna, so up front, I don't really like when people like try to break down players further than these 4 types, because I think it gets really like, I think it's silly. You can make up a type of player for just about anything, but
right. We're making up a type of guy and getting mad at them.
That's right. We're making a guy to get mad at, but I think it can be kind of fun. And there's a lot of these, so I think it's kind of worth looking at. So,
right. Here's one from Robin's Laws of Game Mastering. It's pretty simple. There's the power gamer who wants to, you know, really optimize and make their character stronger. The butt kicker who's there to just let off steam and roll some dice and see them overcome a challenge. The tactician who likes like really finding the optimal tactical route in a situation or being really, really clever. The specialist who wants to play a certain type either in this campaign or in every type of campaign. They want to be a cool assassin. They want to be a heroic Superman knight. And the method actor who it comes up with lots of different really unique characters and really wants to feel absorbed in that person. And a storyteller, you know, person who wants the story to move forward.
He does throw in the casual gamer at the end.
Right.
Which is
yeah, I think we talked about that. That's just
our socializer, which we've mentioned.
Right. Our socializer, our spectator.
I think this is interesting, but you can sort of like tell in Robin's Laws what sorts of games we're talking about and what sorts of players, because all 4 of the first, you know, player types would, to me, fit within warrior or explorer, like some combination of the two. And that would explain them just fine. And then there's, you know, 1 or 2 for role playing and socializer. And so this is heavily weighted towards, I think, somebody who plays a lot of tactical games, a lot of people who enjoy tactical combat. But that might be useful if you're playing, you know, if you're playing
D&D 4E,
D&D 4E or Lancer or any of these, you know, heavy combat games, then you may want to be thinking about this guy wants to do something tactical. This guy wants to kick butt. You know, this guy wants his specialist character to have a chance to shine.
Well, these more granular descriptions bring up things that I see all the time. Like the tactician is someone who, in combat, instead of just using an ability or power, wants to do something cool or clever. Is that person often in social situations, social role playing, wants to come up with a cool and clever. They're the planner type, right?
Yes,
and you know
right,
that can fit in any of the other 4 quadrants. But I think it's one of the more basic things that people come to role playing games for. So you know, you ask yourself: if I have any planner tactician types, am I giving them the opportunity to make plans and come up with clever solutions to problems?
This is interesting. I did say that, you know, I don't know how useful these are, but they actually are kind of useful when you think about when you think about applying them to your games. You know, one thing that I learned with one of my groups pretty early on is like, I am a tactician. I'm given a situation and I like to look at my abilities and look at my group's abilities and come up with like a fun approach, an interesting approach. I love Blades in the Dark for this reason. I'm pretty good at like this type of thinking. I think plans are always good, but they're fun.
Right.
I have players who are like, I'm like, okay, great. Here's a guarded compound. You need to get inside, go for it. And they're like, just, they do
Right.
not
Means
want
you
to come
don't
up
have
with a
any
plan.
planners or tacticians. They
Yeah.
don't want to have an open-ended problem like this to solve. But
They want an
in
NPC
another
to tell them
situation,
exactly what to do. And so I had to
Right.
learn to stop giving them tactical stuff because they don't like it. They're not having fun. And
but
yeah,
some players cannot be tacticians in that sort of heist way, but can be tacticians in like a more social aspect, right?
Precisely,
They own
yes.
a tavern and they find out that the baker that occupies the building to the south hates the magic item seller who lives to the north, and they would love to come up with a complicated plan to get them to stop feuding because it's driving down business at their tavern. And they'll be a tactician in that sort of way.
and that's where the ways that these like overlap are very helpful. And I think that the biggest problem you could run into with these is trying to fit a player into one single category, whether it's like the small Bartle's taxonomy or like one of these like big lists of player types. But knowing that they all inhabit like multiple ones, like Matt said, maybe they're a role player / tactician, right? Like they're not like a specialist or butt kicker tactician, right? They're not trying to come up with a great like battle plan or heist, but this is a great example. They came up with an increasingly, they love to come up with elaborate social, engineering ways of getting into places or solving problems. And that's where I think these can be useful, is because people are complicated creatures, right? And in life as well as in games, our motivations are complex, and not everybody knows. Actually, very few people know what really like drives them, what they really enjoy, and that's, not to get philosophical, but like that's one of the beautiful things and one of the frustrating things about playing these games is that players may think they want one thing and what they actually want is something else entirely, and they may not know that until you've played with them and they've played with you and figured it out. That's not a recommendation that you just do what you want and make your players enjoy it, but it is a thing that you should be aware of. I think I'm speaking specifically because I play with a lot of like new players who are still figuring out what it is they like about role-playing games. But
well, yeah. I was going to save this question for later, but we got to talk about it now because, how do you know what your players fit on these spectrums or these types? What brings them enjoyment? How do you figure it out? They're like, oh, okay, well, this is very useful. I have no idea if my players fit into any of these categories. Obvious answer is to ask them to use something like the Cyberpunk Red chart. But maybe you're going along or you've already done this, like, and like Rob said, people don't actually, if they're asked to sit down and write, what they say and maybe what they do is different. So how do you figure out how your players fit in these typologies?
I mean, you do, I think, need to, like we discussed, start out, give them an opportunity to like take a look at a list or give them a short survey and find out what they say that they want. But, and this is true of other advice that we've given, you just need to be checking in periodically, right? Like making sure, is that still true?
Are you having fun?
Are you having fun? Right. And sometimes you can tell, right? Sometimes you can just like,
yeah.
if
you're good at like reading body language, some people are, some people are not. That's a very useful thing. If you're not, I suggest, right, or you feel like you have too many things going on, is that one page in your DM notebook is just like a divided up grid of your actual players' names, and take some notes. This player seemed like they enjoyed that weird debate we have. This player seemed to really want to acquire new items and spells. This player didn't seem like they were having fun when we did 3 combat encounters in a row.
Yeah,
it's listening.
It's listening, paying attention. I mean, a great sort of like on the ground example of this was when we all had to go virtual during the pandemic, right? And immediately the composition of my groups changed because some things that are enjoyable in person are not enjoyable online, and some things that are enjoyable online are not as enjoyable on person. There was a lot of opportunity to play a lot of really cool tactical combats because we were all switching to like a virtual tabletop, and that made that a lot easier. But I had a lot of players who like to socialize, who had trouble making themselves heard, couldn't focus on Zoom, etc., and dropped from my games. And that was really easy. Sorry, that wasn't easy. That was hard, but it was easy to tell that they were not having fun, or on the other side that they were having more fun doing, VTT combats, because that was sort of like an obvious shift. But
you could really tell who still had to go to an in-person job and who didn't, because the people who actually had human contact during the pandemic were like, I don't need this, and the people who didn't were like, oh, actually, this is socializing for me.
This is there's all the socializing I'm getting. Yeah,
this is another point. It's like usually like the people at your table are hopefully people you're getting to know or know well, but like it's useful to like know what people's other lives things are, right? I have it in my notes. Like I know the people at my table who have stressful jobs, who have to have lots of stressful conversations during the day, and the people whose jobs are like more physically taxing, or have lots of kids that they have to take care of. Having these things in mind can help you narrow down where they fit on these spectrums.
Yes, and this is really good advice. I mean, you should know and like your players, and like know a little bit about their lives, because this will tell you. I I have some players, like I have one group of players, one group that's very, very relaxed, comes to the game happy to chat, has a good time, experienced role players, and sometimes we get a lot done and sometimes we don't. And everybody there is to socialize, to achieve, explore, to learn new things, to chat. And then I have another group that is almost like to a person there to blow off steam. And
right.
And they they like to role play, they like to socialize, but like they also get super amped to like kick ass in game, and they can be real bloodthirsty, and it's fun to see because
this is Thursday or Friday night. It's been a stressful week.
Yes.
Let's kill that bastard.
It's been a stressful week. My mother-in-law is being a pain in the ass. Like job is increasingly frustrating. And so I know they're going to come, and they're also going to be rowdy, and they're going to, I'm going to need to give them something to sink their teeth into, right? And that's like advanced GMing, but it's not beyond your abilities. And if everybody's on the same page, if everybody's coming for the same reason, then that's not too hard to manage. I think if I had to like merge these two groups, there would be a lot of tension.
Right.
I think I could manage it, but like they're just like they're in terms of sort of the vibe, it's radically different.
Yeah. So in conclusion, figuring out where your players fit on these spectrums, it's about asking, it's about listening. It might be involve like a little light note taking during games about, hey, what are they actually doing? What do they actually seem excited for? And then a little bit of checking in. And then as Rob pointed out, groups have an overall vibe to them, right? People feed off the desires and the impulses of others, and some groups grow into socializers, some grow into warriors or role players. Rob, I wanted to bring up a couple other specific types from Robin's Laws, or from the GOAT Aaron Alston that he published in one of his champion supplements that are really cool.
This predates the Bartle's taxonomy, because this came out in 88.
It's because Aaron Alston is smarter than a lot of people who make role-playing games. He's
correct.
Cool.
Correct.
Rip.
Yeah, let's talk about the list. And again, I don't like dividing people up, but what I like about this list is that it's clearly based on observed player behavior. Like, it's not like Aaron Alston is pulling like ideas out of a hat and he's like, this is how people behave. Like, this is clearly like these are the people he's played with or seen play or how they approach his game. And so I think it's an interesting list to look at.
Right. Like, I think two that stood out to me that we haven't really covered so far are like the genre fiend, like people who are like, okay, whether we're doing cyberpunk or D&D, I'm going to find a way to play a vampire, right? And that's fun, and you should see, okay, what is it about that genre that makes them like it, and if it's okay, if it fits with everything else, like how can I enable them to embody that type of character?
Yeah, there's a couple of really good ones on here. I also like the pro from Dover, somebody who wants to be like the best at what they do, and this, this
one thing,
right? There's also
which works for some game systems where you can be, I am the
right.
best action archaeologist in the world, and maybe not at first level D&D. Like, my character is the best with the blade. At a first level D&D game, no, they're not. They're actually really shitty.
I mean, this is cool. This is cool, and this is something you can reasonably do in Champions, or you can do in Shadowrun or Cyberpunk. Where you throw all your resources at being good at one thing, and this is a risk because you're not as good at other things. But like, yeah, those players are not going to have a good time in D&D because you can't be the best at anything. You can't really even be particularly good at one thing until you're very, very high level. But I think that's interesting because these broader categories identify some deficiencies in games, right? Like some games are just not going to be able to serve types of players. And we have seen that, like, certain types of TTRPGs are just not as popular because they don't offer things that are as exciting to the player base. And, I think part of that is something that can be solved with because it's a mismatch and people don't know that these things are available or what types of games exist and what they offer. But I think that
here's another one that I identify with very strongly is the builder, someone who wants to have an impact on the world, right? I find myself getting frustrated as a player when the things we're trying to accomplish or the things my player doesn't really seem to have any effect, right? I like to have effects on things and to see what happens then. And when things get shut down, I'm like, well, that sucks.
As a player, this is why I love Blades in the Dark, and why I'm not too interested in playing a game in Forgotten Realms D&D anymore, because I know that Forgotten Realms is going to be the same at the end of the day, no matter what. My decisions aren't going to have a whole big impact. But Blades in the Dark has built in you're making a crew and a hideout, and you're changing like the composition of the city, and you're affecting the gang war, and you can really build something. And I'm like Matt, and I love that. I also I feel like called out by one of these, the tragedian, the tragedian, somebody who enjoys tragedy, who wants the character to suffer and to play that suffering out. I love to play a tragic character. I love I love it when bad things happen to them. I love when they die heroically or tragically. Oh, yeah. I find that, like, increasingly, I enjoy playing that out. And that is a subset of role player that I feel a little called out by this, because I didn't realize that was common enough to have an archetype, but it does.
This is useful to think about because there's absolutely players who would love to have their character like die or be depowered, right? And one we skipped over from earlier, like the method actor, right? There are people who, stereotypical like theater kid who just wants their character to be fully embodied. Sometimes that's through developing a backstory, from making decisions based on what their character would do, and or maybe doing the very affected voice of their character.
Yeah. You were right to say this is really smart. We'll link all of these, but Aaron Alston smarter than most people, has real insights. There's one on here, the copier, who is interested in recreating a character based on something they've seen in other media, and thus can be counted on to make a character who is a Batman clone or a Spider-Man homage. And um, this is something I've seen a lot. Somebody has a character archetype or idea, and they basically want to recreate that. And that can be a really interesting starting point. And most of the time, in my experience, they have taken that initial idea and gone in a unique way with it. But that I always, this is so far from my experience that I forget about it until I am playing with someone and I realize that they have made a character that is just a copy of something from the movies or a comic book or something.
And this is a character or a player that like is really going to need you to allow them to reskin something often for some games or come up with a custom ability or something. Not always. Sometimes they enjoy the challenge of working within the system. But you know, this might be someone who needs you to help them break some meaningless rules at the beginning of the game. And this is also like the let's see, the method actor, the copier, the genre fiend, right? People who have really strong conceptions of their players or their characters. These are the people for rewards, right? Whether they're story rewards, a new ability, or like a magic item. Like you might need to really consult with them because they're the person who, if you gave them like the +5 flaming axe of dwarf smiting, they're like, actually I want a +5 flaming longsword of dwarf smiting, right. And I don't want this item just because it's the wrong like the wrong skin, basically.
Yes. And one thing that we haven't mentioned, but that's important to clarify, is that this isn't about dividing players into good or bad players. It's just about helping to understand motivations. And a lot of what Aaron Alston describes are people who are uncomfortable or new to role-playing or role-playing games. And these are, and this isn't a bad thing, crutches or aids, right? If you are like, I'm a genre guy, shit, I did this, I think in my very first game, but like I made a gunslinging cowboy in Star Wars because I was just like really all about gunslinging cowboys when I was a teenager. But like somebody who's like, I know this genre, I want to play in this genre, or somebody who's like, I know this character, I want to play this character. And this can be a great first step to becoming a better gamer, better role player, but like they're not entirely comfortable coming to the table with a totally brand new idea or a unique character. Not everybody is good at that. And making room for these people, understanding what motivates them is an important part of being a good GM.
We talked about how these are absolutely none of these things are bad, right? These are just things we want to be aware of, right? So we can improve the flow of the game, improve your own enjoyment, improve your players' enjoyment, right? You know, there are some types of players that I think there are things that some special cases where you need to be aware that this could become a negative. One that Alston identifies is the show-off, right? That just wants the spotlight, right? And, you know, we all have people like that in our lives. I feel like I'm one. And it's usually a good thing to have someone who's willing to keep the conversation going or tell a fun story that gets everyone laughing. But in a role-playing game, right, we got to say, okay, when can I give them the spotlight unadulterated for 5 minutes? And when do I need to make sure that everyone else is also playing?
Right. Another problematic one here is the rules exploiter, somebody who's really just wants to bend the rules to min-max their character. And again, we're not trying to divide people into good and bad, but this is a really like difficult player because part of what they enjoy is the feeling that they have, I don't know, beaten the system, like figured out something that nobody else has figured out. And they will just beat that drum because they really want the satisfaction of having bent the rules or better understand them or found a interaction that is not intended. And
again, the good side of that is you have someone who else at your table who understands the rules and you can rely on to help you figure out tricky situations. And you also usually have a great warrior or tactician or leader for complicated encounters, right? So that's like the good side of the rules exploiters. They understand things and can help guide others when needed.
And if they're agreeable and you have a good relationship with them, they can be a good person to say, you're right, that is a little overpowered. Help me come up with, what would be an appropriate house rule for this? Like, how can we adjust this so that you're not doing, 10 times as much damage as the rest of the team? But yeah, like Matt said, that there's good and bad parts of all of these archetypes, and they all bring something to the table. And I think that, it's fun to think about. I don't know. I am interested in this because you're inclined to we all have a natural bias to think that other people are like us, right? And that they have the same motivations, the same general baselines, and that's not true. And most people are will eventually figure that out. But I think that when it comes to TTRPGs and being a GM, starting from the position that you don't know what your players enjoy and that they're not there to do the same thing that you are, is healthy, right? Like, and this helps you, again, even if you don't try to put your players into these boxes, it helps you to understand and to plan and be like, oh, I am a tactician, so I have planned 17 very intense and challenging combats for the first arc of the campaign, because that's what I enjoy. But then if you talk to your players and you find out that that's not at all what they enjoy, then you can make adjustments, right? You can design something else entirely. And that's much better than trying to run them through those 17 combats and finding out on the day of the session that everybody is frustrated and bored.
Yeah. I think this also, these player types, we're mostly talking about, okay, understanding what gives pain or pleasure to your players. How should I plan goals for them or for the campaign? It can also be as simple as this can help you decide for when to decide to roll or make rulings, right? If you know a player is a tactician or a rules optimizer and they're using a thing and you don't give them a chance to use that in-game ability, they're going to be disappointed. However, a storyteller, a socializer, a role player, right? Or another type of tactician might be like, hey, we came up with this really complicated plan to solve this problem and we've put all these things in place. And then you made us make a diplomacy or a bluff or a manipulation check, and we rolled a 2. It should have just worked. We gave that person everything they wanted, right? Based on our knowledge. Why do we have to roll? And man, this sucks. It can help you know when to use the actual mechanics of the game, right? For certain types of games.
No, that's a great example. Like if none of your players are invested in that particular aspect of the game, you don't need to be paying a ton of attention to the mechanics of it, right? Because I have players that are not super combat oriented or rules invested, I will fuzz the rules on combat pretty frequently. And this is a big bugaboo in the community because people get mad about it. And if I was playing with a different group of people who was really invested in the tactics and the mechanics, then I wouldn't do that. But if they just want to end the combat and get to the part that they enjoy.
Right. They're like, we set up a room. We all have crossbows drawn and a spell trap ready. We take them prisoner, right? Well, some groups want those rolls to happen with advantage and double help and stuff. And others
they want to play out
you to
that. Say, But
want you to say, you won. You were so clever. You won. Perfect.
No, you don't have to individually coup de grace every single goblin in this room. You win. Good job. Now on to the next thing.
Okay, Rob, as we're wrapping up, if we have time, I've got a couple, trying to get really specific to be very helpful for our Game Master listeners here. A couple people that I've drawn from my past year, amalgamated into okay, these are 4 typical people, and I thought we could just spitball very quickly about what types they are and what they want. Sound good?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. First player is Megan. Megan is really busy. They have a very stressful professional and social life. They don't have a lot of time. They often, have to leave early. They really want to have a very special character. However, they're not really engaged with rules or optimization, but they like having a lot of cool powers. They want to role play. They like talking in character, but they let me know at session 0 that they do not want any in-game romance. So what will we say about this character or player? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Megan sounds like a warrior socializer, right? Somebody who's there to hang out, but while they're hanging out, they want to kick some butt. I have a couple of players like this. They're not, it's not that they don't understand the rules. They're just like not super interested in optimization. They're not going to like memorize a bunch of stuff. They've read the rule book, but like, they're not going to spend a lot of time with it. So you want to help them make good decisions about like what will make them feel powerful in combat, but you don't need to like, they don't need to get like super granular about it. Be like,
right. For character advancement with this person, you might be to like, okay, what is it you want to do? And then show them a couple options.
Yeah. And I have had players like this and they're like, I don't know, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, well, here's what I think you would like. And they're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want. And we're like, great, that works out perfectly. Yeah.
I think you also want to like make sure you have situations that can be solved by the cool character concept that they have.
Yes.
Oh, okay. They're a monk. They're a sorcerer. Oh, they meet someone who recognizes the power of your sorceress dragon blood or your monk mastery gives you special recognition here, or a chance to overcome an obstacle or be led into a secret society.
Exactly. If they have explicitly showed attachment to their concept, make sure that concept matters. Make sure that it's important at some point in the game.
Here's another one. Let's call this one Wes. Wes came to the game with his partner, and he probably won't show up if there's an important sports game. He is not interested in the rules at all. However, he has expressed that he's disappointed that his character doesn't have any cool powers. Most of the game, he seems pretty content not to talk or really push plans or ideas. But he does really like it when everyone is focused on what he's going on. But he can often get flustered, like if you just sort of call on him and say, Wes, what do you do?
I've also had players like this one. This one's tricky. I mean, Wes, I think is, I think he's there. He's there with somebody he cares about. So he's, a socializer, but clearly he's there. He does want to engage with the game, though he may not know how. Wes is somebody that I think you're going to want to give them or give him spotlight moments, and you're going to want to be discerning about when you do that. Try to try to pitch softballs, right? Try to give him easy layups, right? So he knows exactly what he needs to do. And if you need to be careful about this, but you got a player that doesn't feel powerful, you may want to just, if it's D&D, drop them magic items or give them like a special ability, because if they're not really paying attention or engaged, they're not going to abuse the system the way that a power gamer might. So you can probably give them something with a little bit more oomph than some of the other players have, so that when they do have an opportunity to act, they get to feel cool.
It's my personal opinion that no one is 100% a wallflower, especially someone who would choose to come to a role-playing game. So it's for this kind of person, you want to find out, what do they need to succeed when the spotlight is on them? And maybe it's some heads up time, whether that's in combat or being your turn is in two people, or being hey, a thing involving your character is going to happen. And then giving them the kind of processing time so that when you come back and yes. So Wes, what are you going to do about this estate your character has inherited? They might have some ideas and can really take the spotlight and not feel like they have to shy away from it.
exactly. I mean, you have to be creative with players like this. I agree with Matt that nobody's like 100% a wallflower, but I mean, if somebody is used to like not speaking up, if they are shy or they don't feel comfortable performing in front of people, but performing in the general or specific sense, you're not going to solve that overnight at your
Right.
at your tabletop game, but you can, and this is one of the things I love about the hobby is you can make it easy, right? Because that's what's cool about RPGs is like you have structure, and even people who are not good at like acting or feel socially uncomfortable have sort of like a way to approach it that doesn't like put them uh their like exact personality in the center of the spotlight.
All right, here's another one, Rob. Joe. Joe loves to make a unique character concept, but they often get caught up in planning and deliberation, whether on a small scale or a large scale, and they know the rules and they love to argue about the rules.
Yeah, so this is one of mine, and Matt, I'm curious how you would approach somebody like this.
Well, this is what we had said before about kind of a genre fiend or like the method actor. Like, okay, give them a chance to show how unique their character is, right? But if they're really, really into planning and deliberation, right? Make sure there are specific times set aside where this situation could be planning or deliberation based. But keep in mind that maybe if the rest of your group isn't into that those things need some hard limits. So the people who are more storytellers can move the story forward. Arguing about the rules is kind of one of the things that doesn't fit in these typologies, and is usually like an out of character, out of game conversation, right? About when it's appropriate to bring up rules challenges, often very appropriate, right? Because we make mistakes all the time. And when it's like time to let things go.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, Matt has hit on exactly what was my approach with this player. It was important to let their character concept do things that were, even if it was very weird, which it often was, like it was, make sure that they have a chance to shine, let them do their planning and deliberation, which they love to do, but, make sure that that they know that there's a limit, right? Like you let your players know, like, hey, you have 5 minutes, spend as much time as you want, thinking about this, but then you gotta make a decision. And yeah, arguing about the rules. Some people like doing that. Some people think they like doing that. Some people can't help themselves. And that's more of an out of game conversation. You just have to say, we're just for the sake of the game, I have to make a decision and we're going to move forward. And usually in my experience, people are okay with that, but it is something that sort of like falls outside the typologies. But there is, I think, a type of player, and this feels a bit like the rules exploiter from the Aaron Alston's list. But some people really do just enjoy the challenge, the tension, the being right, and this is about as close as it gets to being a bad player. I mean, we said there aren't any bad players, but like this is one of the things that you have to sort of like. Some people will come and they want to make you wrong, and they want to prove how much they know, and you have to say, either you say, I'm the boss, shut the fuck up. My approach is usually, I don't really care about that. We're not going to argue about that. I'm not going to engage with this. You have to find your own way to sort of like shut that down, because that's no fun for anybody at the table.
Right. And then you can use the positive side of it and be like, hey, Joe, is this, what kind of check is this? Or Joe.
Yes.
Or instead of having an argument, you can even do this on something you already know ahead of time. Be like, Joe, can you look up the table for X for us? And Joe is there. They have the thing that you kind of already knew was there, and they get to feel like they're good at rules.
Yeah, Matt, we've made this point before, and Matt has brought this up a couple of times, and this is a great way to disarm a power gamer or rules lawyer, which we've talked about a lot. It's a question we get all the time. Give them a job. Like jokes aside, be like, head it off being like, hey, do you remember what this check is? Like, do you know where this is in the rule book? Like, what do you do about this? Like, let them be rules lawyer, but on your terms.
Right. If you frame the question as, uh, not like, not unlike dealing with a toddler. It's like, would you rather have apples or carrot sticks for a
Right.
snack? And then they're going to make a check. It's like, should this be a saving throw or an ability check? Right. And then they can, and you're fine with either one, right? You already
Yes.
won the argument because you,
Yes.
you're okay with
Both of them are fine. That's exactly right.
Yeah, give them the false choice. Yeah, only if you're really good and can be really sneaky about it. All right, Tessa. Tessa is super into making an optimized character, but while their character is very complicated and optimized, they often can't make it to games, or are they have a busy professional life, or very tired during those games. They are so good at system mastery that when they are around, they are often outshining others in both social situations and in actual combat encounters.
This one's tricky because you don't want somebody that is outshining other people, and you certainly don't want them to be sort of casual about it.
Right.
And
I combined a couple people in mind,
Yeah.
but it shows how the idea of a power gamer and a spectator, they're not always mutually exclusive. We imagine a power gamer is, they're very active. Not always.
I have known players like this as well, or close to this. And this one's tricky. You want to find ways to get them engaged, even if they're tired. You want to make sure that they are, at least attentive if possible. And one way that you can try to work around this is give challenges that their character is especially well equipped to deal with, so that they can put that power gaming knowledge to work without just sort of generally outshining the rest of the group. Something that they are specifically good at fighting, or something specifically good at dealing with. But this one's tricky. It may be hard to make a group. People may not be entirely happy with a player like this one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, if in your Cyberpunk Red game, if Tessa had made the world's greatest hacker and has all the abilities and is super good, and you find out that they're tired or can't make it to a session, maybe that's time to cut out the little hacking part of the heist. Or if they're super engaged, give them that hacking job while everyone else is doing something in meat space,
Well, and that's interesting because you can sort of match a person's energy, right? So if I've got a super hard Netscape structure, that net running structure that Tessa, my netrunner, needs to go through, but they're tired, but I know they have 17 dice in cracking. I'm like, okay, give me a cracking check. You're gonna I can just sort of blast through it because I know the rules and they know the rules, and that makes them feel good, but doesn't waste everybody's time. But if they're they're paying attention, then we can run through. We can do the whole thing. And again, neither of these are perfect solutions to somebody who's not bringing 100% to the game, but you can still give them the chance to shine without dragging the rest of the group down.
Right. This applies to everyone. No one can bring 100% to the game all the time. And so, for this player, you might want to, or this type of player, you might want to really check in, what is your energy level hour to hour? And then, just like Rob did, make that decision. Is this hacking thing going to be the full net running mini game, or is it going to be a single check based on their energy level? With those 4 examples, I think we covered a lot of character archetypes and really showed how they either do or don't hold up, overlap in weird ways. I think my final concluding thoughts is, listen to your players, take some notes, know that players change and grow through these archetypes through exposure to you and others. And then at the end of the day, no one is expecting you to do everything for every type of player at every moment. I think there's one way to listen to what we just said and be like, this is impossible. But what we're trying to say is, these are just extra things you can add on to make things slightly better.
Do not get caught up in this. Do not get over your head or overwhelmed. These are just tools, ideas to help you make sure that everybody is having a good time. make you a better GM. You definitely don't need to drive yourself crazy trying to make sure that you're hitting all of these boxes and making your game perfect for everybody involved at all times.
And if there's one, like, everyone enjoys having fun. And if there's one thing that applies to everyone, like, everyone enjoys, like, feeling safe and comfortable. And so we've covered this in our mini episodes on Session 0 or our episode on consent and gaming. So if there's one thing every player type needs is, like, hey, the tools, whatever those look like at your table, to make sure everyone's, like, comfortable from the get-go so that they can actually enjoy being a warrior or a method actor or a genre fiend.
This is a great point, Matt, because even if the game isn't hitting their, like, gamer archetype buttons, if everybody feels comfortable exploring that, if they feel safe, if they feel like they have the room to say, actually, I'd rather do this, or can the game include more of this, then that's the best environment for everybody to, like, sort of, like, learn and grow. So if you are giving people, obviously, if you are able to focus and you know what you're doing and you're able to, like, anticipate everybody's needs and give them a good time just automatically, beautiful. But then the almost as good, maybe even better, is to just give everybody the space to explore what they're interested in. So yeah, your first job is making people feel, allowing them to feel safe and comfortable, exactly like Matt said.
And use this conversation to empower yourself as a dungeon master. Maybe you found out that after reflecting on it, actually everyone's just here to hang out and hang out with me. And they don't give a shit that we're playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Actually, we can play the system I really wanted to play in the first place.
Right.
Or, maybe you're going to find out that people really want more interesting combats. And so that will give you a chance to shine and put in those cool, complicated encounters you've always wanted to do.
If you have thoughts about this or questions about player types, absolutely do please send them to us at dmofnone@gmail.com. Add us on Twitter at dmofnone.
And if you want more of the show or just want to support us, you can head over to patreon.com/dungeonmasterofnone for a ton of bonus episodes and other useful things for your table.
As always, everybody, thanks for listening. And whatever you do, keep rolling them dice.
Capricorn, Sagittarius, Aquarius, Pisces, Gemini, Aries, Scorpio, Libra, Virgo, Taurus, Cancer, Leo,